Let me hit you with a choose bomb right off the bat. China's high-speed rail isn't a transportation miracle. It isn't about speed. It's about money, land, and power, and selling the world the illusion of prosperity at the expense of Chinese taxpayers. It's less about moving people, more about moving money, specifically into the hands of officials and developers. Shiny chains, massive stations, none of that tells the real story. Today, we're diving into one of the Chinese Communist Party's favorite flexes, high speed rail. It's shiny, it's fast, and on paper, it looks like a symbol of national pride. But peel back the paint, and what you will find is a debt filled machine driving land grabs, housing bubbles, and economic distortion. First, let's look at the surface glory, which is all about scale rather than substance. There's no denying the numbers itself are impressive. China leads the world with over 45,000 kilometers of high speed rail, more than the rest of the world combined. That's 10 times more than Spain and 100 times more than the United States. So, on the surface, it looks like a communist victory lap. But ask yourself, why is China building high speed rail so fast? And why do other countries hold back? Beijing tells you it's democratic centralism, the Chinese system that gets things done fast. No messy votes, no debates, just raw execution. But let's not confuse volume with value. The real story isn't in the technology, it's in the economic logic that made this scale possible. Because when you zoom in, what you find isn't transportation efficiency, it is a speculative bubble built on borrowed money and empty land. So here's the game plan. Local governments borrow big to co fund high speed rail projects. They build stations in the middle of nowhere, right? Farmland, wasteland, you name it. And then they hype the hell out of it. New high speed rail town, they shout. Land prices shoot up, developers move in, and suddenly, worthless land becomes gold. The government cashes out through land sales, padding their revenue numbers and GDP. The official gets a promotion too, and the debt, not their problem. And in China, where the state controls all land and owns the development rights, this is the government's favorite cash cow. Let's get one thing straight. High speed rail in China loses money. People love to say the high speed rail is a public good, right? Cheap tickets, national pride, better mobility. But don't be fooled. Ticket revenue doesn't even come close to covering the cost. These rails run on government subsidies and debt. And not just a little debt. China Railway alone owes 6.2 trillion yuan. That's over 850 billion US dollars. And that doesn't even count the local railway companies. Yunnan owes 42 billion, Guizhou over 30 billion. The list goes on. Where does that money go? Not to you and me, not to affordable housing or better welfare for Chinese. It goes into concrete and hype. The only real return is land value appreciation, a return that benefits officials and developers, not ordinary people. It's not about trains, it's about land. In the early years, projects like the Ningbo Hangzhou line were split 60-40 between central and local government. But as the land gain matured, local government got greedy and bold. By 2020, most new high-speed rail lines were 100% locally funded. Why? Because local officials realized they could turn every station into a land sale event. And once the hype started, it didn't stop. Take my hometown for example. In 2019, we got our own high-speed rail station. Sounds great, right? Except it was built in a place so remote that most locals have not heard of it. I grew up there and I had never been there. But the moment the station opened, that empty land transformed. Developers piled in, new buildings mushroomed, and the local government made 225 million yuan on one land sale alone. That wasn't a train, that was a money printer. And trust me, my hometown isn't the exception, it's the blueprint. So if all of this is so smart, why does it feel so off? Because this entire scheme ignores consumer demand. It's not built for the riders, it's built for resale. Take Danzhou, a third-tier city with a GDP of 100 billion yuan and a population just 1 million. It has three high-speed rail stations. One of them, Haitou Station, is 100 kilometers from the city center and barely sees a few hundred passengers a day. Or Fushun Station in rural Sichuan, it is surrounded by 12 other stations within a 70-kilometer radius, yet sits nearly empty. What kind of planning is this? It is speculation dressed up as progress. Ever wonder why so many high-speed rail stations are miles away from the city? Like, what's the point of a 40-minute train if it takes you an hour just to reach the station? Simple. Land near city centers is expensive and already developed. But use this land on the outskirts? That's untapped profit. Build a shiny new station in the sticks, slap New Town on the blueprint, and boom, suddenly the farmland is worth millions. These stations aren't built for people, they're built to justify land sales. Many routes are underused. Some like Lhasa to Chengdu, Urumqi to Beijing are so expensive and slow compared to airlines that nobody's using them. Let's look at Beijing to Shanghai, the most trafficked corridor. By planes, 2 hours, 300 yuan. By rail, 4 hours, 600 yuan. What rational traveler would choose the train? And while ridership slows, the debt keeps growing. China Railway pays 150 billion yuan annually just in interest. Adding the debts of local rail companies, Yunnan Railway, Guizhou Railway, and dozens more, and you have a national debt iceberger ready to sink the ship. Here's another real cost, what most people don't get. While China was building the world's longest railway network, it was hollowing out the consumer economy. Fixed asset investment makes up over 40% of China's GDP. In contrast, consumer spending is under 40%, compared to over 70% in the US. All that money tied up in concrete, steel, and empty stations, it came out of Chinese consumers' pockets, their wages, their consumption power, their ability to live a better life. So while the skyscrapers and rail lines went up, Chinese people's quality of life stayed flat or went down. And the Chinese are only beginning to repay the debt. The CCP sold them a dream of prosperity powered by infrastructure. And for a while, it worked. The trains ran fast, cities lit up, the GDP numbers soared, but behind the scenes, the debt piled up and the land sales slowed down, and the real estate bubble began to deflate. And now China is facing the bill, massive debts with no clear repayment strategy, a fatigued real estate market, slowing growth, shrinking consumer power. That is the price of high speed rail economics, a system where infrastructure isn't built for people, but for promotion and speculation. When Japan or France builds high speed rail, it's for one reason: to move people efficiently. They build where consumer demand actually exists. They calculate long term viability. They don't expect to make billions from land sales because they can't. Land is privately owned. There's no government land grab to exploit. That is why Western and democratic countries move slower. They actually have to justify the economic cost. But in China, it's not about economic efficiency. It's about milking every square meter of dirt for profit. And now, even that model is breaking down. So, what happens next? You can't keep building ghost towns forever. You can't keep selling land no one wants. And you can't promote local officials based on GDP numbers made from smoke and mirrors. The question now is not whether high speed rail was a mistake, it's whether China can survive the handover of the bad debt. China is entering a decade of reckoning, a time when the glamour of the glass towels and steel rails gives way to the harsh realities of debt, deflation, and underconsumption. So, yes, those high speed trains are real, but they don't tell the whole truth either. I have traveled the world: Paris, New York, Tokyo, and yes, China's infrastructure in first tier cities is impressive. But let's not confuse fast trains with a rich society. Let's not confuse big buildings with real prosperity. Let's not confuse state led investments with actual wealth creation. Because prosperity built on debt isn't prosperity, it's a time bomb. And when it goes off, it won't just derail a few rail lines, it could derail an entire economy. So the next time someone tells you, look how amazing China's high speed rail is, ask them this: amazing for whom? Because if you're not the one selling land or getting promoted, you're probably the one footing the bill. If this opened your eyes, share it, comment, subscribe. Let's tear down the illusion, one track at a time. This is Ken, and I'll see you in the next video.